Hey guys, Josh here, and I bought and played Oriental Valley so you don't have to. This is a new farming game released on April 25th, 2024 on Steam. It looked quite unique, so I wanted to check it out with you all. In this video, I'll walk you through my first few hours of the game, give you some of my thoughts, and that should give you a pretty good idea of what Oriental Valley is like. I usually don't talk about title screens in my videos, but I felt like in this case it was worth taking a few seconds to look at it. There's this Pokemon looking creature giving us a glimpse at maybe a feature we can expect. There's a train which will become a big part of the story. We can see the main character on a bicycle. I don't know how she's not falling off since she's not moving and her feet are not on the ground, but nothing too bad so far. What caught my attention the most were these watermelons, carrots, and eggplants flying through the screen. These do such a good job at telling us that this game doesn't take itself too seriously, which is why I'm also not taking it too seriously, and they give us a taste of what we're about to experience. After staring at these flying fruits and veggies for a few minutes, I gathered my courage and started a new save file. The story began with a bus stopping in the middle of the road because there were nails, and my character, which I didn't get to create, customize, name or anything, got off the bus. One jarring thing I noticed right away was how the character was perfectly centered on the screen. In most games, you would have the camera slightly above the character so that you can properly see in front, but the way it's positioned here, half of what you see is just the ground and what's behind your character, and it takes some time getting used to. Also, if you're sensitive to motion sickness, I'm very sorry. I was able to reduce the camera sensitivity a bit later, but overall, the whole camera situation is not great. After running and jumping around for a bit, I met this old man who was standing in the middle of the road, and you'll see that people and things in the middle of the road are a recurring theme in this game. He looked like a strange mix between a toddler and an old man wearing a hat with a yellow chick on top. He admitted he was the one who dropped the nails on the road. He talked about the bus and asked questions about my hometown, but while he was rambling and asking me questions, my character had no lines, no emotes that would indicate at least a yes or a no, no animations at all, which made it seem like the guy was just talking by himself and I had to guess the missing half of the conversation. He told me he was the head of New Young Village and that there was unfortunately no bus going back to my hometown. He said he would look up a way to get back home, but that in the meantime I could stay in a house near the village. I already had so many questions. Why was I on the bus in the first place? Why did I get off? How do I not even know how to get back to my hometown? I'm not sure, but there I was in this beautiful modern house with a gigantic bed. I looked at the date and it was not spring, it was not first month, it was this month, 2nd Thursday. So they definitely have a very interesting way to tell time in this game, and watch until the end if you want to find out what the other months are called. As I got out of the house, I saw this blank mannequin looking guy. His parents wanted him to live a simple life, so they named him Simp. I'm not making this up, this is the kind of stuff you can expect in Oriental Valley. As I was playing, part of me kept thinking this was some sort of parody of a farming sim, and they were just trying to be quirky. Another part of me was thinking they just didn't want to put the effort into making dialogues that made sense. The reality is probably a bit of both, but it was quite the experience. Anyway, Simp asked me to prepare some wheat for him and told me he would come back 3 days later to pick it up. Before getting started with the farming, I decided to have a quick look around my farm. I found a picnic blanket, I tried interacting with it, and my character had her very first line of dialogue, and I quote, "A piece of picnic cloth, but its use is unknown." I think it's pretty clear picnic cloth is used for picnics, but I'll give her a pass for this one. I then met another mannequin looking the same as Simp, but this time wearing a pink beanie. I think the first line was actually meant as a description since they didn't bother making different character models, and it said a little mushroom girl with her basket made of bamboo, so you just have to use your imagination and pretend that this is a girl with a bamboo basket. There comes the plot twist though. She told me she lost her bamboo basket and therefore wasn't able to pick up the mushrooms, so she told me to pick them up for her. So I did that, and then she rewarded me with 2 fresh eggs that she had in her pockets, implying that she didn't even need a basket. Is this funny? You let me know. It's definitely nonsensical. It sounds like the kind of scenario I would have written as a 12-year-old trying to be quirky. It could make me smile, but it's not a kind of humor I would pay for. And I did pay over 23 Canadian dollars or 18 US dollars for this. Maybe it's a cultural difference as well, but if you are into this kind of humor, it could be a game for you. Then the old mushroom girl with her basket made of bamboo disappeared, and there I saw a bridge leading to New Young Village. Unfortunately, I was told that a mischievous kid damaged the bridges in the village, and that I would have to wait until the next day for this one to be repaired. So I went to the supermarket next door, the clerk told me she faked her resume and did a 30-day class to work there, and then she gave me some free tools and seeds. The fields in this game are made of these little squares that darken when you till them, so I planted some seeds, then I watered them with my infinite watering can. The controls were functional, but it was far from a satisfying farming experience. Not the worst, but nothing special. I then noticed a little swan boat, and just like for the picnic cloth, my character had no clue what this little boat could be for. Maybe she comes from a different universe, which would explain a lot of things, so I decided to explore to make her a bit more familiar with her new surroundings. Never mind, there were invisible walls everywhere, and what seemed like a large open world was actually quite restrictive. So I just went to bed, and the next day I found yet another blank mannequin in front of my house, and this one learned how to use solar energy from another country, and he was about to move abroad again and couldn't bring this solar-powered fridge with him, so he gave it to me to use as storage. I did not need any storage since I had a large inventory, and we do have to talk about the inventory. Every single time you open it, you hear this,
Burr?
and whenever you close it, you hear this. I don't know why they decided to go for these sounds, but you can expect to hear bird and ping pong a lot if you ever make the mistake of playing this game. Not only did I get a fridge, I also received my first letter in the mail. It was coming from old Jang, who asked me if I was into fishing and to meet him near the dam in the village if I was. By the way, very few characters have names in this game, but I learned that my character was also named Jang just to make things a little bit more confusing. On my way there, I met with quite the cast of characters. The president of Country Oddities Coalition, who gave me a list of trophies to obtain, a chef who wasn't just a blank mannequin for once but had nothing interesting to say, a cat mascot at the volunteer station where people could post quests, an old lady who asked me if I was Mr. Liu's granddaughter. I said yes, then she started arguing, said I was lying, and that I was in fact Mr. Lee's daughter, not Mr. Liu's granddaughter. I also saw this girl who spent all day on this swinging bench, this guy who was waiting for a sofa to fall from the sky, and this doctor who kept coughing. I somehow made it through all of these quirky characters and met with old Jang. He blamed his failure at catching fish on the fishing rod, so he just gave up and gave me his rod. Somehow though, you could still see him actually fishing with his rod even after giving it to me. I went down to this little area to fish and met with this guy who was also incapable of getting any fish, but that's because he completely forgot he had to use a fishing rod. So I had to get 5 fish for him, and the fishing was pretty simple. Simply cast the fishing rod, click a few times when the fish bites, and that's it. It's not a horrible fishing mechanic, just like the farming, it is functional, but it doesn't feel better or more engaging than fishing in any other game. I then explored the town a bit, but most of the areas were blocked off with bridges that needed repairing. However, I was able to reach a place called Village Entrance, a bit confusing since there were multiple entrances, and there I saw 3 guys who asked me for 30 bamboo shoots, 30 apples, and 30 tomatoes for their new diet. One thing I noticed is that a lot of the quests were asking for seemingly high quantities of items, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get all of these anytime soon. Not only that, but I was unable to get apples from the apple trees in the orchard, and I learned from one NPC that I needed a broom as apples were impossible to pick up by hand. Of course, it makes sense you need a broom to pick up apples. What was I thinking? I couldn't find any broom shop, however, so I went home and I got a letter from the fishing forum congratulating me on my catch and telling me they would send me a trophy. The following day, the village head, I don't think he has a name by the way, he was waiting at my door and he told me how there would be a clue about how to go back to my hometown very soon. He also told me that if I was bored, which I was, I could go to a bustling and hustling market every Wednesday and Saturday by taking the bus. I quickly harvested my wheat, sold it by putting it in that vehicle, which I couldn't drive unfortunately, and then I went to see the bus driver who told me we would leave once the bus was full. It was far from full, I was the only passenger, but we still went. The mayor didn't lie, it was truly bustling and hustling. Except for this garlic vendor who refused to sell me any as it would give me bad breath, I could buy plenty of vegetables, furniture, or even a cow. You may recognize this cow from titles such as Everdream Valley, or more recently A New Leaf Memories, who shares quite a few similarities with this game. I love to see all of these new farming games with the exact same animals that the developers bought for $34.99. I found a clothes shop at the market too, so you can customize your character with outfits such as Basketball Babe, Love Reminder, Sporty Chic, or even Cat Stories. But I didn't have any money, so I went back home, and there I saw my beautiful fishing trophy waiting for me on the side of the road. With no way of moving it, it was just going to stay there forever for my neighbors to see how cool I was. Speaking of neighbors, I tried to go to the next door village. That's the actual name of the village, it's called Next Door Village, but they wouldn't let me in. They were competing in the Top 100 Beautiful Village contest, and they were only letting the goat of the countryside in, not undercover agents from New Yang Village. In order to become a goat, I would need to collect 20 Agrispirits, which are the Pokemon-looking creatures. I knew I wouldn't be able to keep playing until I found 20, but I decided I would do my best to get at least one for this video, and don't worry, we will. By the way, when you go from one area to the other in this game, transitions don't make any sense. For example, you'll be on a bridge, you'll see specific buildings and a landscape on the other side in the background, but then you will cross the bridge and everything will be completely different, which is a bit disorienting. We're now on day 5, or I should say this month 5th Sunday, and I had completely forgotten about Simp, who asked me for wheat a few days earlier. Unfortunately, I had sold everything already. He tried to make me feel bad for him by saying he was leaving the village, that there would be no more Simp and that no one cared for him, but that he would love for me to tell him goodbye at the train station. Before doing that, I had a chat with this guy who bought this ranch with the intention of turning it into a gym. It didn't work out, and he offered to sell it back to me for 2000 G. I didn't have the money quite yet, but I definitely wanted to have some animals. As I was heading to the train station, I noticed that the village now had electric scooters to make traveling around a bit easier. As you can see, the developers did not bother with physics or animations. It was faster than walking though, and I quickly made my way to the station. I looked for Simp on the platform and near the train, which was a bit off track by the way, but he was nowhere to be seen. I then talked to the train conductor, who told me to be careful of scams. I love the self-awareness this game has, and she told me that Simp was already on the platform. It then cut to a cutscene where Simp was waving goodbye, I don't know to who. The train was just arriving, even though I had seen it a minute ago, so I thought the cutscene was maybe showing the events before I got to the train station, but then I saw my character standing in the grass, not in the direction Simp was waving at, and nowhere close to where my character actually was, so it was just overall a very confusing cutscene. I don't know why I keep trying to make sense out of this game, it's completely pointless, nothing at all makes sense. Also, until now, I have been paraphrasing or summarizing most of the dialogues to fit them into this video, but let me read you one conversation I had with the train conductor from beginning to end, just so you can have a better grasp of what it feels like when you're playing. So after the cutscene, the conductor, not my character, the train conductor, said, I didn't get to say goodbye to Simp one last time. Hey, no need to be upset, what's life if not a series of regrets, right? Oh, you're planning to take the train back to your hometown? Hold on, that train isn't headed to your hometown. Oh, so you're the new friend going back to your hometown. Don't worry, the village head has already sent my colleague to investigate the route. You take a good rest today and we'll have the results tomorrow. I promise I did not skip any line, this game has the most unnatural conversations. I think it's completely fine to have a silent protagonist, that's something I usually don't mind, but with everything being so poorly written, there's a lot of guessing and it feels like lines are missing. Once the conductor finished talking, my character did this little thumbs up and said, you can go back to your hometown tomorrow, as if she was talking to me, the player. Before returning home, I met a second time with the chef who said he would send me a stove, and I also saw this girl called Linnan who asked me if I wanted to join her mining startup, but she didn't give me any pickaxe or anything to get started. Oh, I also went to this place called Activity Room, which didn't have much to offer in terms of activities, but there was this one girl, Luo Meili, who tried to explain the meaning of her name based on the different characters it's made up of, which I'm sure probably made a lot more sense in Chinese. Needless to say, this game does not have the best translation, maybe this is why some of the dialogues are a bit rough, and other things like this newspaper or magazine are simply not translated at all. I also found this little gem in the activity room, a book called The Lazy Goddess of the Activity Room. It's a story about a girl named Noemi who works in the activity room and who's secretly a popular online fiction writer whose viral works include riveting titles such as I Transmigrated to the Past and Became an Empress, My Sweet Life as a CEO's Wife, and My Epic Journey of Rebirth and Revenge. It goes on to talk a bit about her life, and I'm assuming it's probably written by Luo Meili, who works in the activity room, so I like that there's a bit of lore, we can dive a little bit into the minds of the characters, but that's probably where the game peaks in terms of storytelling. When I got back home, I noticed a letter from Simp. I'm not sure if it was already in my mailbox, but he told me pretty much the same thing he said in person, that he was leaving and hoping I would come to say goodbye at the train station, and that he was just a poor stick figure in a 3D world and that no one liked him. But he also told me a little secret. He had a cave beneath his house where he put some pickled cabbage. I managed to find the house, not the cave quite yet, but that's because I get quite easily distracted, and I found this place called Stellar Valley. There I met with this guy who asked me to sprinkle fireflies on him to get the attention of his crush. So I did that, I got to experience the bug catching mechanics, and I use the word mechanics, but like the farming and the fishing, the gameplay here is extremely bare bones. So I sprinkled the guy with fireflies, his crush was still nowhere to be seen unfortunately, so he said that he would find someone else and disappeared. The following day I got woken up by an announcement asking for all village committee members to head to the activity room for a meeting. I didn't know I was in the committee in the first place, but I made my way to the meeting. Before getting there though, I had a chat with a retired grain mill in the middle of the road who asked me for some rice, and I will work on that a bit later. During the meeting, the mayor told us to keep our eyes peeled for Agrispirits, and my character blinked for the very first time. He then properly introduced myself to everyone. It was a bit awkward since no one moved or said anything. Then the meeting ended and I went to check in with the train conductor for an update on getting back home. Just like with the bridges, it turned out that some brat playing with a magnet messed up the rails. Of course, I would be the one required to provide all of the money and materials required for the repair. I decided to focus on something a bit less tedious though and help the grain mill. So I bought a few rice seedlings, and rice works differently than regular crops in this game. You just throw the seedlings in the water and wait for a few days. I like the attempt at doing something different, but like everything else in this game, it seems like no effort has been put into making it actually fun. This seems like such a missed opportunity, especially with the Oriental theme the game is going for, but for now, if you're looking for a game with good rice farming mechanics, I would recommend Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. While I was waiting for my rice to grow, I checked my mailbox and there I saw a letter from Linnan who told me she was looking for a mining partner, even though I already had that conversation with her the day prior. I noticed that a lot of the letters I was receiving were very redundant, like this one, basically repeating conversations I already knew but a bit later. I went to see her, she told me pretty much the same stuff as the first time, but she gave me a pickaxe so I could actually start mining. So that is what I did for the rest of the day, and like everything else, the mining in Oriental Valley is functional, but not necessarily fun or engaging. One thing I will give this game, however, is that the lighting looks pretty good, especially in the mines. With the money I had accumulated until now, I was able to purchase the ranch near my farm, and the guy told me he would deliver the gym equipment, which I wasn't too sure why at first, along with a feed, grinder, and a scythe. If you played a farming game before, you're probably used to planting grass, maybe watering it, or at least waiting a few days for it to grow, but that would be too complex for Oriental Valley. Here, you simply have to find one of these flowery bushes, and you can get what I think is an infinite amount of grass by using your scythe on them over and over. The feed grinder wasn't there yet, so I couldn't process the grass, but I decided to go spend some time in town, and there I was introduced to my favorite part of the game. It's this minigame called Card Slap. There are 3 cards in front of you, and you can choose between Slap, Fan, and Hammer, which are being shown here by these photos of real hands. Slap has an 80% chance of flipping over 1 card, Fan hits 2 cards, each with a 40% chance of flipping over, And hammer hits all 3 cards, but they only have a 20% chance of flipping over. So the goal is to flip cards, and the number on the cards will reduce your opponent's HP by the same amount, and your goal is to get their HP to 0. It's honestly a pretty simple and fun minigame. To make things even better, I got rewarded with 4 bull coins for winning that I was able to use in this gacha machine. Each draw cost 2 bull coins, but I got pretty lucky and some of my first draws were even more bull coins, so I was able to keep going for quite some time. I got some money, some food, but also a few pieces of furniture. You can decorate your house in this game, and there is no grid, so you can place and rotate furniture freely. I put down some tables, this little bookshelf, and also noticed that I had this stove that the chef sent me at the beginning. So I used that to make some carrot juice, and we all know that is exactly how you make carrot juice. When I got back outside, the feed grinder was there all of a sudden, so I threw some grass inside and got some animal feed. Now I just needed animals. The timing was great because the next day was Wednesday, which meant the bus was going to the market. I went there, I bought a cow, and the game said it was a bull, but somehow it would still be giving milk. It turned out I was actually going to be using the ranch as a gym, and the way the bull is producing milk is by working out. Yeah, this is what ranching looks like in Oriental Valley. By that point, I had done quite a few things and I was starting to accumulate a good amount of trophies by the side of the road. The only big feature of the game I had not experienced yet was the Agrispirits, these creatures you can collect. I went back to Simp's house and I finally managed to find the cave he was talking about. There I found a big jar of pickled cabbage, and this lovely creature came out of it. The game asked me if I wanted to name it Deer Grains. I tried saying no, but it told me I couldn't come up with a better name and asked me again if I wanted to name it Deer Grains. I guess I didn't have a choice, so I said yes to Deer Grains, and I got teleported back home and the day ended. When I tried interacting with Deer Grains the next day, it said it appeared to be wanting to farm, so I thought maybe it would help me, so I stole a ton of seeds from the supermarket. I really didn't have to pay for them, I just grabbed them from a stall, and then I planted them in my fields, hoping to see Deer Grain watering them or something. He did not do anything, maybe he will be able to harvest them later on, but the game did not explain anything, and by that point I knew that no matter what he would do, there was no way that Deer Grains could save this game. Before wrapping up though, one thing that really piqued my curiosity the whole time I was playing was the date system. As I said at the beginning, we didn't start the game in spring, not even in the first month, but in this month, so I wondered what would the next months be called. To find out, I slept over and over again. There are 30 days per season. There's also no way to skip this long waking up animation, which surprised me for a game that was severely lacking in animation, but I did it so you don't have to do it yourself. And here are the results. So the first month is called this month. The second month is called next month. The third month is called following month. The fourth month is called last month. I assume it then goes back to this month, but none of this matters as the game doesn't have seasons. Things always look the same, and the only time you would ever want to look at the date is for when the bus comes on Wednesdays and Saturdays to go to the market. After all of these months though, my rice was ready to harvest, and I was able to save the grain mill and get it off the streets. So that is how my first few hours of playing Oriental Valley went. It felt like a fever dream. It was a very unique experience, but not necessarily in a good way. Yes, the characters are very quirky and nonsensical. It can be funny for a little bit, but I don't think it's enough to make the game worth a purchase. And that's really the only thing that stands out because the gameplay, whether that is farming, fishing, bug catching, mining, or decorating, everything is very simple, there is nothing unique, and simple can be good, but here it really doesn't feel satisfying or rewarding in any way. It's also worth pointing out that this game is not in early access, it is a full release selling for $18 US, and not only that, but they're also selling DLC with extra outfits for $9, which feels like quite a questionable move considering the state of the game. But you tell me what you think. Have you played Oriental Valley? Were you looking forward to it? Let me know in the comments, leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and I'll see you all in the next video.